What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sunday Drive. Today we are going to be driving a 1999 Honda Civic Si, chassis code EM1. Some quick specs: this has a 1.6 liter engine, the B16, making about 160 horsepower, and a torque number that's over 100 pound-feet, and frankly doesn't really matter. We did a full review of a red one of these, also owned by the same person, last year. Link in the description down below if you'd like to see that. But today we're going to compare this to the Acura Integra GSR, which you can see over there, which we just drove. It is a fantastic car. We're going to answer the $20,000 Honda question. In the classic Honda world, everything has gotten so expensive, but this car and that car are sort of the still $20,000 for a very nice one. Car that you can kind of get a lot of that Honda experience, but without breaking the bank. So let's go ahead and take this 1999 Honda Civic EM1 Si for a drive. Oh, and as per usual Honda fashion, we have a 5-speed manual transmission, which feels absolutely fantastic. So before we do a comparison to the Acura Integra GSR, let's go ahead and give some brief, driver impressions. So as per usual in Honda fashion, steering feels very good. A lot of feedback, although there's a lot of 90s, that 90s dead on centers we talk about with every single 90s car ever. Although interestingly, more so than that car. Shifter feels great. It's a little bit light, but it has a very nice engagement in the gear. Classic Honda shifter. You get a lot of feedback in this car from the throttle pedal, brake pedal, clutch pedal. You know exactly what this thing is doing. I will say the clutch and gas are a bit light. Clutch pedal does have a very nice bite point, and the brake pedal, if I tap it here, nice and firm on initial press, and I'm sure the modulation is good. We'll talk about that later. But all right, now let's compare it to the Acura Integra GSR, which we just drove up there. If you'd like to see the full review of that car, go ahead and click the link in the description down below. I'll put a thing up here. Watch it after this if you'd like to see my impressions of that car. But right off the rip, I would say that the EM1 Si has considerable extra amount of feedback, considerably more feedback. Engine noise for sure is the biggest indicator. You get a lot more induction noise from this thing. And the gearing is also a lot shorter. We're sitting at about 4,070 and 3,900. You're sitting at that RPM at 80 in that car instead of 70. 1.6 liter engine versus the 1.8 liter engine. This having a 1.6 liter engine versus that one's 1.8 liter engine, which make you think that this feels less torquey. But because Honda shortened the gearing in this car, it's actually not the case. And I love how Honda does this. They'll make an engine smaller, but then they'll shorten the gearing to make up for it. So even though it is a little bit slower, it doesn't feel slower in the driver's seat compared to that. The CRX Si and the EF Civic Si have the same thing going on. Same engine, same amount of power, but the CRX is shorter gearing, and it makes all the difference in how the CRX drives and the power delivery. It just feels so much more peppy. And we have kind of the same deal going on here. Oh, it's funny though how eerily similar the driver's controls are. The shifter, the pedals, all of it. Downshifting, I mean, it feels the same. Classic V16 sound. That was the noise that sold the internet on Hondas. VTEC just kicked in, yo. Oh my goodness, gotta love it. I would say this was the sort of first Honda that went mainstream and everybody went, oh man, that thing's cool. Especially when people put cold air intakes on these back in the day and they just had that right at VTEC. Oh, I love it. And I'll say right out the rip, compared to the GSR, this feels more lively. This feels more connected and more, in your face, like, this is a sports car, a sports coupe. Now in the GSR, they try to deaden a lot of those vibrations, the engine noise, all of it, make it a much more high-end luxury car. Now that one has cloth seats like this. Funny to think, that thing is a vinyl steering wheel. This one's a leather. Most of those had leather, and a lot more of these were vinyl. So it's funny to kind of get that backwards interior sort of options to it. But anyway, that car was more luxury-esque. This wasn't. say this feels like it has considerably more understeer compared to the GSR. The GSR feels just a little more gripped up, a little more confidence-inspiring than this does. But this is more lively than that car is. So it's a bit of a trade-off. That's like more of the, you know, sort of European car approach of, you know, this is a substantial sport coupe. We have, you know, performance. It is going to do what you ask of it without a fuss. This is a little more lively and has more of that playfulness to it. It's definitely slower than the GSR too, but when you're in the driver's seat and you're actually rolling through the gears, you know, the rate at which the tach climbs feels about the same as in that car, which is probably intentional by Honda. This doesn't have the same displacement, but it doesn't feel slower in the driver's seat. And that's what's great about, you know, cars with less horsepower and shorter gears, is they, you know, you just kind of, like, you just kind of get to have that experience of, you know, rolling through the gears more often. And that might be what some people want. You know, sort of sport coupe. You want to roll through the gears more. This engine for sure does feel more lively though. When you're approaching 8,000 RPM, this car just has a way of delivering that power and that torque that you don't really feel in a lot of other cars. It just screams all the way up there with those higher RPMs. When the GSR is getting those higher RPMs, you sort of feel like, okay, it's time to shift. You know, not necessarily like the engine's unhappy about it, but you get this sense, like you feel what's going on. You're like, okay, it's time to shift. Now I know what's going on. This, nah. Feels like it would rev forever if you let it. But in the classic Honda world, all 90 sports cars have gotten super expensive. And when you look at them from the sheer numbers and, you know, performance numbers, what value you're getting, they're all kind of a bad value. To be honest, new cars are just better. But if you want, I had my signal on there for no reason. But if you want a fun 90s Honda, you have to look at what cars am I looking at? What is the relativity to others? What is the comparison I'm making? And if we're comparing classic Hondas for $20,000, I would say you really have three options if you're trying to get the best value. And that's this, that, or a less nice S2000. Now, the less nice S2000 is actually going to have some more of those European car problems like valve adjustments, maybe some deferred maintenance. Whereas these two, you're not going to have that problem at all, which is why I think these are a much better comparison. These are also both, you know, front-wheel drive. They're technically coupes, but also sort of like liftbacks, or at least that one is. So for 20 grand, if you want to buy a really nice classic Honda, you know, low mileage, you're going to be looking at an Acura Integra GSR or an EM1 Civic Si. There's something I said about Hondas last year when we drove the Great Lakes Vintage Honda Collection, which is where this car is from, is that Honda has a way of having a bunch of different cars that are all four-cylinder, all front-wheel drive, and all coupes, hatchbacks, you know, whatever, that sort. But they also have a way of making them all feel different from each other, which I think is something that a lot of brands struggle to do. Is they kind of just make like, oh, this one's bigger, but it's otherwise the same car. But Honda didn't really do that. Every car that Honda, I would say, certainly made, and probably still makes, I haven't driven as many of the newer ones, they all sort of felt different. An Integra, a Prelude, an EM1, these all had the same sort of underlying prerequisites of a Honda, but they have a way different way of delivering on what that actually means and how it feels. Ah, there's the understeer. Yep. Yeah, this, pausing for a second, this has quite a lot more understeer than that car. It's a little more front-end plowy, which I'm guessing is to the suspension design. The Integra chassis and the suspension on that car is just so amazing. It's probably one of the best front-wheel drive cars ever produced as far as handling characteristics and dynamics. You can kind of just throw that into a corner without thinking about it. This one, like the curb right there, you know, if I had taken that at full speed and full send, it would have come a little bit closer. $20,000, you want a nice one. I think the difference in the SI versus the GSR really comes down to, you know, what is your preference? Do you want something a little more lively like this? Or do you want, you know, something a little nicer? Do you want something that's a little more composed? This feels sharper on its feet and it has more feedback, but once you actually get into it, that one is more confidence inspiring and that one handles better. So on the question of should you buy an EM1 SI or should you buy an Acura Integra GSR for your $20,000? Well, I think it depends. Do you want something more lively, a little more initial feedback, something a little more playful like this? Or do you want sort of a more adult combination of European and Japanese sort of luxury car, but not quite? We talked about it a lot in that video, but that car blends a lot of what's great about European cars and a lot of what's great about Japanese cars into one. Whereas this is a thoroughbred Honda. You know it's a Honda the second you hop into it. And when you're driving around, like within the first 30 seconds, you're like, aha, yep, Honda. So it's very much just a different in character and a difference of what do you want in the driver's seat. Me personally, I would probably lean a little more that way than I would here, but they're both fantastic driving cars. If you're interested in the Great Lakes Vintage Honda collection, go ahead and check the link in the description down below. They have tons of Hondas. They restore them all the time, and sometimes they list them for sale, although I know the owner has a tough time selling some of these sometimes, and frankly, I don't blame him. This one is not for sale, but that one is. Go check out the full video if you'd like to see a 60,000 mile Integra GSR being driven on the road. You never see them that nice. And if you enjoy this type of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like the video. It lets me know that you guys enjoy this content and you want to see more. But with all of that said, everybody, we will catch you in the next video.